you'd be interested in going back to in a new capacity? No, you're done.
Chris Pine just detonated a nuclear bomb in the middle of the Star Trek franchise, and Paramount is in absolute freefall trying to contain the damage. According to multiple sources, Chris didn't just quietly distance himself from Star Trek or politely decline future projects. He allegedly made explicit public comments about leaving the franchise specifically because it's become too woke. And the backlash to those comments has created a crisis at Paramount that could genuinely mark the end of Star Trek as a viable entertainment property. This is unprecedented. We're not talking about an actor diplomatically saying a franchise isn't the right fit anymore or that they want to explore other opportunities. We're talking about Captain Kirk, the face of Star Trek's most recent film series, publicly stating that the franchise has become so focused on progressive politics and woke messaging that he can no longer be associated with it. And the reaction from both sides, from progressive fans and media attacking Chris, and from other fans celebrating his honesty, has created such a toxic firestorm that Paramount has no idea how to move forward. The panic at Paramount is real and justified. They've already lost Chris Pine as their movie Captain Kirk. They've canceled Starfleet Academy after one disastrous season. They've faced rebellion from Star Trek veterans like Patrick Stewart. And now, Chris has given the world a soundbite that will define the Star Trek crisis for years to come. When Captain Kirk says Star Trek is too woke and he's leaving because of it, that's a franchise-killing moment that no amount of damage control can fully repair. Let's break down exactly what Chris Pine allegedly said, the firestorm his comments created, why Paramount is panicking, and what this means for the future of Star Trek. The bombshell reportedly came during an interview Chris did promoting one of his non-Star Trek projects. According to people who've seen the full interview, Chris was asked about his future with Star Trek and whether there was any chance he might return to play Captain Kirk again. Instead of giving a standard diplomatic answer about being grateful for the opportunity but moving on to other projects, Chris allegedly decided to be brutally honest about why he left. Chris reportedly said something like, "Look, I'm going to be honest with you because I think people deserve honesty rather than the usual Hollywood PR nonsense. I left Star Trek because it's become too woke. The franchise I signed up for was about exploration, adventure, optimism about humanity's future. What it's become is political lectures disguised as science fiction. Every episode, every story has to be about contemporary social issues, about identity politics, about making sure we check all the right diversity boxes instead of just telling good stories with interesting characters." The interviewer apparently tried to push back or ask for clarification, but Chris allegedly doubled down. He reportedly continued, "Star Trek used to be progressive in the best way. It showed a future where humanity had overcome its differences and was working together, but it did that through storytelling, through allegory, through respecting the audience's intelligence. Now it's just heavy-handed messaging that beats you over the head with how enlightened the creators are. And frankly, it's bad television. The writing is weak, the characters are underdeveloped, and it's all in service of delivering political messages rather than entertaining people or making them think in meaningful ways." Chris allegedly then made specific reference to Starfleet Academy as an example of everything wrong with modern Star Trek. He reportedly said, "I watched Starfleet Academy because I wanted to see what they were doing with the franchise. I couldn't get through 3 episodes. It was painful. Every character was defined by their identity, their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, instead of by their personality or their goals or their relationships. Every storyline was a thinly veiled commentary on current American politics. It didn't feel like Star Trek. It felt like a college sociology class pretending to be science fiction." The most explosive part of Chris's alleged comments came when he directly addressed the woke label and his decision to use it. According to sources, Chris said something like, "I know some people will attack me for using the word woke, but I'm using it deliberately because I think it accurately describes the problem. Star Trek has become more interested in being woke, in performing progressive politics, in virtue signaling, in showing how enlightened and inclusive it is, than in actually being good television that tells meaningful stories. And I'm not going to participate in that anymore. I'm done with woke Star Trek." The reaction to these alleged comments has been absolutely explosive and completely divided along predictable lines. Progressive media outlets, entertainment journalists, and left-leaning fans have launched furious attacks on Chris Pine, accusing him of pandering to toxic fan elements, of being resistant to diversity and inclusion, of betraying Star Trek's progressive values, and of using right-wing talking points to criticize the franchise. Articles with headlines like Chris Pine's troubling comments about Star Trek reveal ugly truth about Hollywood, and Why Chris Pine is wrong about woke Star Trek flooded the internet within hours. These pieces argued that Chris was either ignorant about Star Trek's history of progressive politics or was deliberately misrepresenting modern Trek to appeal to reactionary fans. Think pieces appeared claiming that Chris's use of the word woke was coded language for opposition to diversity and representation, that his criticism of Starfleet Academy was really about not wanting to see Black and LGBTQ characters in leading roles, and that his entire critique was in bad faith. Several prominent progressive voices in the Star Trek fan community released statements condemning Chris's comments. Some called for him to be canceled and excluded from any future Star Trek projects, even if Paramount wanted to bring him back. Others demanded that Chris issue an apology and retraction, admitting that his comments were wrong and committing to supporting diversity and inclusion in entertainment. But the other side of the reaction has been equally intense and far more supportive of Chris. Longtime Star Trek fans who've been critical of modern Trek for years celebrated Chris's honesty and thanked him for validating their concerns. YouTube channels, podcasts, and social media accounts that focus on Star Trek criticism amplified Chris's comments, using them as evidence that even the people involved with making Star Trek recognize that the franchise has serious problems. These fans argued that Chris was making important distinctions that his critics were deliberately ignoring. He wasn't opposing diversity. He was opposing the specific way diversity is being implemented. He wasn't against progressive values. He was against heavy-handed messaging that sacrifices storytelling quality. He wasn't betraying Star Trek's legacy. He was defending it against people who are destroying it. Many pointed out that Chris's criticism echoed exactly what Patrick Stewart had said about Starfleet Academy, what the veteran Star Trek cast rebellion was about, and what millions of fans have been saying for years. The fact that Captain Kirk himself was now saying it publicly gave enormous credibility to criticisms that had been dismissed as toxic fandom or resistance to change. The backlash to the backlash has been intense. Fans defending Chris have been attacked as bigots, as right-wing trolls, as fake fans who never understood what Star Trek was about. This has created a toxic spiral where everyone is attacking everyone else. Discourse has become completely poisoned, and any possibility of productive conversation about Star Trek's creative direction has been destroyed. Paramount's panic stems from multiple factors. First, Chris Pine's comments have created a public relations nightmare that they have no good way to respond to. If they defend modern Star Trek's approach, they alienate the fans who agree with Chris and validate the narrative that Paramount is more interested in politics than quality. If they agree with Chris's criticisms, they admit that their creative strategy has been flawed and undermine confidence in their current shows and leadership. Second, Chris's comments have given enormous ammunition to critics of Star Trek and have made it much harder to promote future projects. Every new Star Trek show or film will now be scrutinized for wokeness, with Chris Pine's comments hanging over everything. Paramount can't escape the narrative that even their own movie, Captain Kirk, thinks the franchise has become too politically focused. Third, the toxic fan discourse that Chris's comments have intensified makes it harder to build audience for Star Trek content. When the fan base is this divided and angry, when every new project becomes a political battleground before it even airs, casual viewers stay away because they don't want to be part of the controversy. Paramount needs to attract mainstream audiences to make Star Trek profitable, but the toxic discourse makes that nearly impossible. Fourth, Chris's comments might embolden other talent to speak out or distance themselves from Star Trek. If Captain Kirk can publicly criticize the franchise for being too woke, why can't other actors or creative people do the same? Paramount might face a flood of similar statements from people who've been privately unhappy but were afraid to speak publicly. Fifth, the comments validate every negative narrative about Paramount's handling of Star Trek. The cancellation of Starfleet Academy, the departure of Chris Pine, the criticism from Patrick Stewart, the cast rebellion, all of it can now be tied to the idea that Star Trek has become too woke and is alienating both talent and audiences. That's a devastating narrative that will follow the franchise for years. Paramount has reportedly been scrambling to figure out how to respond. According to insiders, there have been emergency meetings with executives, producers, and PR teams trying to develop a strategy, but every option they've considered has serious problems. They could release a statement defending their creative approach and implicitly criticizing Chris's comments, but that risks creating an open war with Chris Pine and with the segment of fans who agree with him. It would also require Paramount to argue that Starfleet Academy and other criticized shows are actually good, which is a tough sell given the viewership numbers and critical reception. They could try to stay silent and hope the controversy dies down, but silence will be interpreted as either tacit agreement with Chris or cowardly refusal to defend their creative team. Either interpretation is damaging. They could try to get other Star Trek talent to make statements disagreeing with Chris and defending modern Trek, but most Star Trek actors are smart enough not to wade into this controversy, and forcing them to choose sides would create more problems than it solves. They could try to reach out to Chris privately and get him to walk back or clarify his comments. But Chris allegedly made these comments deliberately and knew exactly what reaction they would generate. He's unlikely to retract something he clearly believes and wanted to say publicly. The financial implications are also significant. Star Trek content on Paramount Plus has been expensive to produce, and the return on investment has been questionable. If Chris Pine's comments accelerate the decline in viewership by intensifying the toxic discourse and validating criticisms, Paramount might have to seriously reconsider how much they want to invest in Star Trek going forward. There are reports that some advertisers and corporate partners are concerned about being associated with the Star Trek brand given the toxic controversy. Companies don't want to be caught in the middle of culture war battles, and Star Trek has become exactly that thanks to Chris's comments and the reaction to them. The situation with Star Trek IV has also become even more complicated. The film was already functionally dead after Chris quit, but there was some theoretical possibility that Paramount might eventually find a way to revive it or make a different Star Trek film. Chris's public comments about the franchise being too woke make any reconciliation essentially impossible. He's burned the bridge so thoroughly that there's no path back. What makes this particularly painful for Paramount is that Chris's criticisms are largely accurate. Starfleet Academy really was heavy-handed with political messaging. Modern Star Trek shows really do prioritize identity politics over character development in many cases. The writing quality really has declined compared to previous eras. The franchise really has alienated significant portions of its longtime fan base, but admitting that Chris is right would require Paramount to fundamentally change their approach to Star Trek, which would mean admitting years of mistakes, potentially replacing creative leadership, and completely rethinking their strategy. That's incredibly difficult for any corporation to do, especially when it would validate critics and potentially anger the progressive audiences and creative talent they've been cultivating. The comparison to what's happening in other major franchises is instructive. Disney has faced similar controversies with Star Wars, with shows like The Acolyte being canceled after one season amid criticism about prioritizing political messaging over storytelling. Marvel has seen declining box office and viewership for projects that are perceived as too focused on diversity and representation at the expense of quality. The pattern across all these franchises is the same. Studios prioritizing political goals and diversity metrics over storytelling fundamentals, creating content that alienates longtime fans while failing to attract new audiences, and then facing backlash from both talent and viewers when the projects underperform. Chris Pine's comments about Star Trek are part of this broader pattern, and they represent a potential turning point where major talent starts publicly pushing back against the creative approaches that have led to these failures. If Chris can say Star Trek is too woke and face minimal career consequences because enough people agree with him, it might embolden other actors and creative people to make similar statements about their franchises. The panic at Paramount also stems from uncertainty about what comes next. If they can't make Star Trek IV, because Chris is gone, if Starfleet Academy is canceled, if future shows face even more scrutiny and backlash because of this controversy, what is their path forward for the franchise? They've invested enormous resources in Star Trek on Paramount Plus, but if the brand is becoming toxic and divisive, how do they justify continued investment? Some at Paramount reportedly want to double down on their current approach, arguing that Chris Pine's comments prove they're challenging people and that controversy generates attention and engagement. But this strategy ignores that the controversy is largely negative and is driving audiences away rather than attracting them. Others at Paramount reportedly believe they need to make significant changes to address the concerns Chris raised. This faction wants to bring in new creative leadership, refocus on storytelling fundamentals, and make Star Trek more accessible to mainstream audiences rather than treating it primarily as a vehicle for progressive politics. But implementing these changes would take years and would require admitting that the current approach has failed. The most likely outcome is that Paramount will continue with Strange New Worlds, which has been relatively well received, will be much more cautious about greenlighting new Star Trek projects, and will quietly de-emphasize Star Trek as a pillar of their streaming strategy. They'll keep the franchise alive because it has value, but they won't invest as heavily or take as many risks because the backlash and controversy have made Star Trek more trouble than it's worth. Chris Pine's alleged statement, "I'm gonna leave woke Star Trek," will be remembered as a defining moment in the franchise's history. It's the moment when the face of Star Trek's modern film series publicly rejected the creative direction the franchise has taken and explicitly identified progressive politics as the problem. That's a franchise-killing statement that Paramount can't recover from without fundamental changes. The tragedy is that Star Trek has survived so much over its nearly 60-year history. Cancellations, long dormant periods, failed films, creative missteps. But it's never faced a situation where its own talent is publicly saying the franchise has become too political and that's why they're leaving. That's a different kind of crisis that can't be solved with better marketing or a new showrunner. It's a crisis of identity and purpose that goes to the core of what Star Trek is and who it's for. Paramount's panic is justified because they have no good options. They can't undo Chris's comments. They can't make the toxic discourse go away. They can't suddenly make Star Trek appealing to both progressive and traditional audiences when those groups are at war with each other over the franchise's direction. They're stuck managing a crisis that keeps getting worse with no clear path to resolution. The future of Star Trek is genuinely uncertain in ways it's never been before. And Chris Pine saying he's leaving because it's too woke might be the statement that historians point to as the beginning of the end for one of science fiction's most legendary franchises.